Hello. I hit play without her knowing I was going to hit play. So
Here we are, starting again. So this is another special because I'm still in this beautiful paradise right now.
yes.
And yeah, we were just hoping to have some inspiration. Well, we always have inspiring conversations, but we're like, we got to turn it on. We got to do a podcast one more before I leave. And so we were just kind of, which always, we just kind of tune in to like, what are we feeling inspired in? What do we feel like talking about? And so one of the things that has been really relevant to me in my life right now personally, and probably for a while, but just really come to terms with it, is this concept of surrendering, which isn't the same as like the white flag. I surrender, like give up, like when we feel like, you know, being taken over, like I'm surrendering a battle. It's more like redefining that really for me in my life. So I was just reading this from my journal that I wrote the other day, and Chris was like, hey, you should start with that.
Why don't you start with that? Because that's what happens with us at this point too. That's the point. Excuse me. The point is we start talking about a topic that's relevant and pertinent to what's going on in our life, and then we chat about it, and then there might be some gems in there for other people. So I asked Lana if she would just read it out.
Yeah. So again, I always love journaling, but I don't do it often. But when I do, I'm like, usually, you know, like anything, it comes from the heart. So I just wrote, surrendering is not the same as giving up or resigning. It is letting go of all that we don't have control and having faith God will work it out in our favor, even if it doesn't look the way that we think it should. It means stopping the insanity of trying to control a situation to get an outcome that you don't get to decide on. Our ego would rather give up or resign because that means we can emotionally close off. But to surrender means we're still in it, vulnerable in it, but trusting that we're going to be okay. And it's not just okay, we're going to be great. So surrendering to life, love, and God is kind of where I had left that. And I think when I wrote that, like if I could describe what's maybe brought me to that, I think the last couple years, as probably for many people, it's been rough. It's been tough to like, you know, go through maybe where you thought your ideal path or what you kind of were doing, and COVID really turned that upside down for, I think, a lot of people. But for me, it kind of started professionally. I've worked really hard and, you know, to really advance my practice and my career, and then I was faced with that kind of decision of like, that could all be taken away from me without any wrongdoing, without anything, just because my own personal convictions and my choices for myself. And it was heartbreaking, like a grieving process, but what it brought me to was just that surrendering to the fact that I actually don't have control over that. And so if I surrender to it, it's different than me giving up and saying, I'm leaving, I'm out, I'm quitting my career, I'm doing something different, which, you know, sometimes people have to do that. It was more like surrender the fact that I'm still here, I'm still vulnerable in it, I still don't, you know, things have shifted in COVID, but there's still a lot of uncertainty. Surrendering to the fact that I have to trust that I didn't choose this path. You know, God didn't lead me to this path to be, you know, suffering. So trusting that it's going to work out perfectly. Not just okay, but work out perfectly.
Yeah, I think when we talk about, and sometimes I wonder if the word surrender is a little bit of a confusing definition.
Yeah, I think so.
That's, you know, because it's a confusing
sure.
thing. Because really it's handing it over. It's saying, hey, this isn't mine to decide.
Yes.
This is not, I get to actually let my higher self, the universe, God, whoever, whatever that is, we all know what that is for ourselves.
Right.
Guide us in the decisions, but at the same time, actually walking that out.
Right.
walking the decisions out is really a vulnerable thing, because we have to let go of the outcome. We have to let go of what happens, and it's like, okay, well, if I make this choice, this is where
Right.
I lose,
Right.
and I don't know what is to fill in that gap. I don't know
Right.
what is going to actually
Evolve.
change, whatever,
Right.
to bring more, if there was to be more.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to just be okay, but there might not be more. Like, it's just
The uncertainty of it
the
all.
uncertainty. Yeah.
But trusting and having faith that it will. I mean, that's what faith is believing in the unseen. So believing that even if it doesn't look the way we think it should look, that I have faith that it will be great.
Well, here's what's unreal is if somebody actually turns around and says, you know what, if I actually just go point by point in my entire life until today and look back at the times I did that, and what came from that was always something better. Always
Right.
something better.
Well, and I think that's actually, I think, the way God works. I mean, I think that's the way it's. We're always trying to control it all, and then when it doesn't work out, we're suffering because we're trying to control something we don't have control of, and that's where, I mean, the supernatural always works in areas we don't have control.
True.
Right?
Yeah, true.
And then we're always like blown away because it's like, wow, that's incredible. Yeah, because we could have never done that on our own.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's hard to get. I think for me, which was like mind-blowing, was I equivalated surrendering and letting go to disconnecting, to disassociating,
I-
to
relinquishing.
yeah, like the whole concept.
Yeah.
Not like, how do you still be in a situation that's not perfect, that's not sorted out, that's uncertain, and still have all your chips on the table, but surrendering to the parts you don't have control over. Like, that's a hard place to be. Often we just want to be like, okay, sure, I'll give up. I'll give up. So I'm out. I'm either emotionally out, I'm physically out, and so then we're just basically waiting to wrap it up, and we're actually closing ourselves off, I think, from the miraculous in that moment of seeing how God wants to work with that, right? Like,
I think-
that
Yeah.
didn't connect to me, and I mean, I've definitely looked at letting go before, and large intestine is all about letting go energetically, so I've definitely looked at that. I've always had digestive stuff. It's been my weak spot. It's where I hold my stress. But it's just like I've uncovered a new level of understanding in that,
Yeah.
which is vulnerable and humbling. Like, it is really not an easy place to be.
No, I think it's not an easy place to be, but I guess that's what I was going to, was the practice of relaxing into,
Right.
instead of surrendering, instead of letting go. It's relax into being held and moved through.
Right.
I read a book when I was like 15 years old, I think 14, 15 years old, that said, it was basically just how, I think it was called The Power of Your Intuition. But it's really, how do I discern? How do I discern? Because it's me making the decisions.
The fact that you're reading that book when you're 15, first of all, is mind-blowing. I wasn't doing that.
I was, what is intuition?
Yeah.
What is this?
Right.
And I think the first 2 pages caught me, because they said anybody can, this isn't just for
Yeah.
the odd person. Everybody has the capability to do this. You just have to hone the skill,
Right.
practice it, whatever.
Right.
And I agree. Not a lot of people know how to connect to
Yeah.
being guided,
Yeah.
because we're still making the decisions in the guidance.
Right.
You know, when I ask for that guidance, I surrender and I say, hey, I don't know the answer to this. I don't know what's going on. And then I listen for, oh, I'm supposed to pick up the phone and phone Alana. Oh, I'm supposed to actually walk out the door. Oh, I'm supposed to not go to that event. I'm not supposed to phone that business call back.
Right.
I'm supposed to reschedule that call, whatever that is. So it's still my action in the surrender.
Right.
But the action is coming from me,
Right.
the higher power, superpower, supernatural, God, all of the things that we're guided by to lead us in that. But so honing the skill of intuition and our being inspired. I call it being inspired. Wayne Dyer actually coined this statement. I can't remember what book it was, but he said inspired.
Right.
I can't remember what book it was. Somebody will quote it. One of his, but he I like how he says inspired means to be guided by spirit. So
Right.
to be in spirit,
Right.
to be guided by that universal
Which
stuff.
is actually, you said something that maybe I didn't think about for myself too, is that surrendering, maybe that's another way of explaining it too, is it's an active process, it's not a passive one.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's what you're saying, is
Yeah,
that
it's active.
it's not something that you're consciously, like, okay, like I said, like I think that's where I was really like letting go, is like this passive thing where we're just kind of stepping back,
Yeah.
where surrendering is actually more of an active thing. You're still doing the things, you're still participating, you still have hopes and dreams and all those things, but it's letting go of the holding on to, trying to create this outcome. And then it's insanity, like I wrote, it's freaking insanity.
Yeah.
Trying to hold that all and then move all the parts and pieces of which you don't have control over, and it's
Well, here's a good example of what's happening in my life and what I do. And I get excited when I feel inspired from a surrendered place, because I know it's miraculous information coming through. What I do is I journal. I will write and journal. And then before I journal, I just ask literally to be guided. I just ask, okay, please guide my words, guide my thoughts, guide my whatever. And I journal it out in a vision. I see, I can see, I get, it's, people call it dream boards and visioning and all of these things, but really it's letting the vision come through me and then writing it out. And writing it out in a way that, so the example is, let's say I have, like at this point, I've got to make some pivots and adjustments from a career perspective as well, money perspective,
right.
living home, perspective, lots of big decisions in the next 2, 3, 4 months. And subsequent, and it is letting go of things to let things come in, and it's bringing things in to fill the space. But it's best for me for me not to choose that.
Right.
It's best for me not to actually make those adjustments and decisions. It's best for me to be guided in those adjustments, because it'll happen way better, and in ways. But there's definitely things where I'm like, oh wow, that's a big letting go. That's a big surrendered back to, I have no control over that, and I know I have to make that decision, and I don't know what comes from it except for loss.
Right.
By making that decision. Those are the hardest ones.
What you can see in the lens that you have.
Yeah.
It feels like if I go there, it's lost.
Well, it literally is. It's conversations, letting go of partnerships and directions and
Houses. Things
I've cultivated. Yeah, houses, homes.
That's a hard word.
Yeah, yeah. So the confidence where I can actually feel when I'm not anxious around it, when I'm not worried about it, where I can feel more confident in what's going to come from it, is when I step back from making the decisions intellectually and I just let myself be guided by it, and literally take the steps that sometimes make no sense.
Right.
Make no sense. And maybe I'll be ridiculed by them. Maybe people will think I'm insane,
Right.
Okay, fine.
I kind of did a little bit when you were like, I'm selling all my things, and, taking a storage locker and putting my stuff in, and I don't know where I'm going to be. I was super inspired by it, but I guess that's one of the reasons why we don't do it, is counterculture.
Part of it is I had to rip off the Band-Aid, because I have been talking about having, living in Canada and living somewhere else, getting rid of winter in this physical body. This physical body needed to not have winter anymore.
Which means I get to come wherever she is in the winter, so it works for me.
That has been in the works and there's a yacht in the future, and I was like, I'm not going to have a yacht in Canada, so
no, definitely not.
No, so I'm like, how do I move towards the yacht? Whatever. But I also then had things that were tying me to being dependent where I was. Then the gift of COVID showed up, of which made me really make a decision.
Right.
Like, wow, this place that's very comfortable isn't feeling very comfortable right now. And where in the world at this
Doesn't
point
feel comfortable.
would it be more
Right.
comfortable, resourceful, whatever?
Right.
Not just for me, but for my friends and family, and so people I love and whatever.
Yeah.
And projects and ideas and vitality. So, but in that process, I was like, I've been being guided this way for a long time, and the fear to even just do it is I've got to do this step to this step to this step.
Right. My butt's going down.
But that means by the time I get to this step, I'm homeless. Oops. Thankfully, I have people who love me
Yeah.
and are,
Supportive
supportive in my
process.
craziness, thankfully, and even for a short period of time. But even if not, even if I didn't have that support, it was inspired to go that direction and be okay with, I don't know.
Right. And you love having, like we were talking about, like what is it the hardest thing is you love having a home, like your sanctuary, your place of like refuge, and not having that consistency of a space. That's hard.
Yeah,
that's why I think homes are so dear to us, right? And even when we travel, it's like that bittersweet, hey, I don't want to leave, but I can't wait to go home.
Yes.
I miss my bed and
True.
I miss my kids.
I think part of that home part for me is the reliability, the stability, the consistency, the quiet, the sanctuary is where I hear best. It's where I hear best to be inspired by.
Right.
I don't hear that in the chaos. I don't hear that by being distracted about human being, being a human being and gorgeous places and all the
It is gorgeous.
I don't hear best being distracted that way. So I kind of need the best of both worlds, where I find my guidance in that sanctuary. So I have to create that wherever I go, so I can continue to be guided,
Right.
and continue to surrender with confidence. Not that it always happens that way, but man, it's a huge practice, right?
Well, and I think what I've recognized too, and you said it, what stops us is fear.
Yeah.
Fear of, it could be a number of things. Like when I think about, for me, fear of poverty, right? That fear of, I've invested this much time and energy and money, and this is, the vision I have. So then there's the fear of, if I let that go, and then also sometimes that, we talked about this week too, is like you get so invested into something, the idea of taking a loss on something,
Oh yeah.
right? Of just like
throwing
so
in the
you
towel.
double down and you keep putting it in, even though it's everything is pointing to the fact that you actually need to
Let it go. Yeah.
So I think there's that fear of failure, fear of poverty, which is totally irrational, because every decision I've ever made, there's always abundance that comes with
Always
it.
abundance.
We just don't always know what that looks like,
Yeah.
again, because we're surrendering to the process.
Yeah.
So I think the fear, and even I think fear of societal, well, I mean, like you said, how many people think I was crazy? Like, because there's a society of like, what do you mean? You've worked hard to get, own property in a beautiful location like Kelowna, like that's valuable and it's only going to go up, and like an investment potential, and it's your home, and you like do so many things with it, and you're being like, actually, I don't care. Like that's,
And part of it also was that in that whole accomplishment, from a financial perspective, I had capped out at what I had the capacity to do. And that's not from a logistics perspective, not from a career perspective, but an energetic perspective. I'm like, why am I still at this spot? Why am I still at this spot? Why am I actually going into debt for my business? Why is my business upside down? Why are the loans getting higher and bigger and whatever? Maybe it's because I'm here in this environment, and this environment needs to
it's
change.
the only one that you're limiting yourself by that environment.
So,
to level up.
right, to level up, take the environment out, use the capital to leverage it to get better, more, bigger, whatever. That actually was a big part of the inspiration was, hey, there's an opportunity presenting itself here to capitalize on the investments that I have and shift and move them and take that and move it. But that means everything that I've worked for from an asset perspective is now in cash.
Right.
And now it's in cash, and now I need to go figure out where to place it and then cultivate that. But I had to pull it out to move it back in. That also meant that a lot of the tangible assets, my home, my community, my place, my whatever. But a lot of the other things were pointing to, this is what you have to do, Crystal. COVID's doing this, community's doing this, Canada's doing this. And here's the other inspiration. I'm in a position in my life as a single woman with no kids, and my focus in my career, I am 48 years old, and I have a window of opportunity that a lot of my friends and family don't have as much as I do.
Right.
For you to do what I did.
She's vetting it for me.
For you to do it, exactly. For you to do it, for my brothers to do what I did, for my other girlfriends to do what I did.
It would create a lot of instability in a lot of people, especially when you have children, right?
100%.
Yeah.
It hasn't been and wasn't and isn't as easy.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, I think part of the inspiration was maybe I need to forge the way. And felt a little bit of that responsibility from an inspired perspective, not a you guys weighted perspective.
Yeah.
It's freaking scary.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, I don't know how to do this, not sure what country it is. There's a bunch of things going on. What investments do I put this capital into? It's all dissolved. Where's my mom gonna live? Like, how's my brothers doing?
Right.
All this stuff that I had created as a stable environment, gone. And even as we sit right now in this gorgeous, beautiful place and a gifted opportunity, I think this is actually dipping down.
This is our improv makeshift video for all you with imperfect lighting. Why don't you just recognize how imperfect I am right now, guys? Okay? It's a big move.
Yeah. My butt's going numb.
But I lost feeling and we came back.
Is actually that whole thing. Just being in this environment, also going,
reflecting.
Even so, what I had planned for in the 6 months of vetting this whole thing, had
we're supposed to be in the Bahamas right now.
Pivot, diverted, whatever, exactly. You had a flight to the Bahamas.
And if you only knew how many things we had to pivot this week. It's just 1 week of, hey, I got these plans, and then my flight's delayed, and weather delayed, and missed a day, and then, the weather, we got to be on this side of the island, and then this side of the island, and we're kind of like chasing the sun all week, and daily changing our plans.
Surrender
over and over and over. There is a definite message in that.
Very true.
And I think that's also, as you settle that too, we had an interesting conversation this week as well, where one of the gentlemen we were talking to was talking about the economy being just like that, in that intuitive space of like when you make decisions like you're doing and feeling like again, I think about that in relationships that happens, that we hold on to it, double down, but it's a lot of times investments, like financially, projects, that rather than being honest with ourselves about the truth of the situation, we just keep pouring money into something, or maybe that's a business of our own, maybe it's an investment, whatever it is, something that we're like, but it's completely out of your control. And if we just sometimes take the loss and follow the inspiration, it's not a fight anymore, and it'll actually turn out way better. And we learn the lessons in the process that I think is necessary in any, I think about the business situations I've been that haven't turned out. Man, they were gifts. I didn't see it at the time. It was like, really?
Yeah.
But now that I, know what I've gone through, and again, out of my control, failed companies, lost money, had to restart several times in the early part of my career where I'm really trying to establish myself. They were incredible gifts, like learning how to trust my intuition, ask, trust when you have questions in your mind are valid, right? Things that we discredit ourselves with. So I just thought that with it's so parallel in so many things in our lives.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm seeing that in my career and next steps and what that looks like and surrendering to it rather than trying to be like, okay, well, this podcast is an example. It's not an A plus B plus C. It's not a matter of if I do this, then this happens. It's I just feel inspired, let's do this.
Yeah.
And the more that I do that in my life, it's vulnerable and scary.
Yeah.
But even in my relationships, in my family, in my friends, the more that I'm surrendering to, I don't get to decide how this turns out. It's not just me that gets to fix that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It shows up in every area of our life. And I just thought it was something that we don't often think about because I think we still think it's in our control a lot of the times. If I just, which I would do, well, if I just do it a little bit this way, or if I just, grow a little bit more this way, or if I just understand, and then I'm just like, but what if it's actually not in my capacity?
Yeah. Maybe it's just maybe it's already done. Maybe the lessons are already done. Maybe the pattern is already, it's like,
Right.
okay, I don't need to redo this over and over and over again.
Right.
I think that's also where we have to listen. It is such an interesting process. I think the vulnerability of being wrong, not being perfect, going, I thought it was this direction.
Right.
And when I always go back to the mistakes, the imperfections, the thought I was wrong, the oops, the man, whatever, it's because I did it.
Yeah.
It's because I actually lent more on my intellectual side than my intuitive side. And
needed it to work for some reason.
Yes.
Intellectually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, there's lots to be said about planning things out and taking those steps and walking through the actions.
Perseverance and dedication.
Oh, yeah, dedication and
commitment. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But there's always that question, is this commitment or is this responsibility? Is this an inspired commitment or is this expectations?
Right.
Is this put on me or is this actually coming from me?
Right.
Right? Through me.
And sometimes that changes. It maybe started one way.
Started it. Yeah.
And then it shifted. And that might just be a perspective that needs to be evaluated, or it might be just the reality of the situation.
So how do you plan to cultivate practice and be more in this place of surrender and be guided and to let the abundance and the joy and the prosperity and the ease happen?
I was thinking about that because I was also writing my intentions for this week, and I feel like I did really good on the top 3: relax, have adventure, support my adrenals. But the fourth one was get clarity on next steps, which is exactly what you're asking me.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's been an element of struggling in that probably for the last few years of what is next steps and what do I feel? Why don't I feel called to one thing? I feel like if I had that conviction, I'd be like, let's do it, because I'm determined and I have the ability to be perseverant and motivated in my back pocket. That's easy. The harder part was the surrendering. But when I reflect on that, I think the thing for me is I got to be present, in the moment, which means that's what I am when I'm journaling, that's what I am when I'm meditating, that's what I am when I'm praying. I have to find consistent space to do that, and I intuitively know that because when I go away and I am by myself and I have that space, and I get there again and I remind myself oh yeah, this feels so good. You need to do this consistently. And then I go back to life and I get in the distraction and I get in the to-dos.
Okay, can I give you some feedback at this point? Just really vulnerable, because I'm going to not throw her under the bus.
She's always throwing me under the bus.
Just gonna.
I sometimes wonder, why did I choose you? I love you.
We chose each other.
Yeah,
you throw me under the bus, you little brat. So that's why.
That's totally why.
And that's what I'm excited about, is, someone who can see me for my strengths and qualities and whatever my weaknesses, and lovingly say, hey, Crystal, what about this?
Yeah, we had a really good conversation the other day, right? We argue well.
We do argue well. Yeah, we debate well.
Yeah.
We argue well. Yeah, we come through it with love, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's so good. So, but my observation, and here's the gift: we haven't spent this time together, like ever. And we've known each other for 17, 18 years.
Yes.
And
Quality, like every day.
yeah.
One-on-one. Yeah,
It's been
great.
so good.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, Alana does that. Like, what? I didn't know that. What? Oh no, she sees this in me. I wonder what she's thinking.
Funny part, she points out things that she does too.
True.
Did you know that you ask me all the time about where we're going, what we're doing? And like, did you lock the door? Did the door lock? Did you lock the keys? And the one time I have the keys, she's like, did you lock the door? Like, I can press it one more time. That'll be 4.
So true. But what I've noticed is you distract yourself from spirit by not being present. It's not often that you'll leave yourself presence.
Yeah.
Grab your phone.
100%.
Will be you typically it's your phone. But again, a phone is a computer. It's not a it's a whole bunch of things that we need. We're gonna look up something, whatever. But I found my experience is I'm like, oh, okay. And you were just talking about the practice of
Yep.
knowing what it takes for you to actually let that guidance come through. I guess I've realized this week that you're quite in your head often. And when you aren't, the inspiration and the gifts that you get to come through are profound. I'm like, she should stay there more often.
Yeah.
And my question is, I wonder why you divert yourself. I wonder why you divert yourself, because you do.
Well, I wouldn't say, not consciously.
Unconsciously.
Yeah,
Yes,
unconsciously.
yeah.
I think there's partly habit.
Yeah.
I'm going just intuitive here for a minute. I think it's not that because of my desires, I want to be in that space. I think there's a lot of expectations I put on myself. I think it comes from that place, whether it be, I should do this, I should do that, I should. I should all over myself. No pun intended. So I think what happens is I'm probably really consciously thinking about, I need to do this, I need to look this up for my kids, I forgot to schedule that appointment, I need to cancel that appointment, I need to, I've been meaning to look that thing up.
The hyper detailed stuff.
And this is something that she didn't realize, I'm detail orientated, so there's, I do pay attention to the detail, and that's part of just my personality, my nature. That's not something you can, turn off. There's certain people who are one way or another. But I think it does then lend to the fact that
it gets in the way.
It means that I'm
sometimes.
Yeah. And I've thought about that too, because I've tried scheduling it. Like, okay, at this time I'm gonna have, like in the mornings, I have a block of time where I'll either work out or I'll take the dog for a walk or stretching, or time to journal, or the journaling, the meditation is always at the bottom of the list, right? And so I think I always want to do it in a place of inspiration, but I can't get inspired if I don't actually have the space to be inspired.
Interesting.
So as much as I don't want to be regimented in that, because then when I'm regimented, like I said, I will have a tendency to probably go to the gym or something. But there is a practice, so there is an element of a discipline that you have to do.
Yeah.
I just, like I said in my last podcast, if you didn't hear, my nemesis is time always, so then I'm always like, I consciously don't want to schedule things, because I feel so much of my life is scheduled. My most free, spiritual freedom is when I can not be scheduled.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I'll just give you an example. So I've been day trading, currency trading, Forex, for a couple years now. And in the last couple months, probably 6 months, there's been some big turning points in my success within the trading platforms. And one of the biggest things, and the reason why that I don't trade certain times, is because the success is profound when I do certain things and they're all set up.
Right.
They're the same pair, the same time frame, time zone. They're I also have got up, asked for guidance, journaled, looked at the charts for a certain period of time, literally put a timer on it. 30 minutes, you're not taking a trade for 30 minutes, no matter how great the trade is, whatever, and then got into it, and the success of that session is profound, unreal, every time.
When you're doing the discipline.
When I don't do those things, it's definitely questionable. I'm anxious, I'm not sure, I've had taken lots of losses that way, so I just don't trade if I don't do it. So that's an example, and part of that process has let me realize how significant that guidance is in that. So when I'm distracted and I can't control the environment, I can't control my time frame, I can't whatever, I literally will, the two main things that really are successful in that whole process is I take a breath and I say, can you help me? Can you help me? I'm asking God, asking the universe, asking, my higher self, this isn't mine, please just guide me. Guide me, I'm listening. I'm listening. Guide me, I'm listening, my next step is yours. My next step is yours. That's it.
Doing that consistently on the day-to-day, which I think we talked about
and
before. It's not always having to take allocated time. It is that too, but it's also consistently through the day getting back into the present moment, reminding yourself that I'm here in this right now. Because when you ask for guidance, it means that you're open and receiving in that moment.
Perfect example is this podcast. For the first 5 minutes, I don't know if you noticed my face if you're watching the video, but I was blank. I'm like, I'm listening to Lana and I'm not hearing anything come through for me. I'm like, I'm so grateful she's talking right now because she's inspired, and I'm just like, not
feeling it.
No. So as you were talking, I literally said, I'm listening, please guide me. In my mind, I'm listening, please guide me. And I'm like, okay, well maybe there's some good stuff to come through. And no matter what comes from, I can feel the ease. I can feel me being more at ease in the moment, in the present moment. We were in the accidental business meeting on her holiday trip that we were here. I'm like, hey, do you mind if we go to this business meeting?
It was a good lunch.
Yeah, it was a good lunch. And even in that business meeting, I got stuck in being inspired to respond to what was going on. And as I sat there, I just literally asked, can you please help me? I'm listening, So that has been that practice, not having to have the environment be perfect and whatever, but just really reconnecting and then letting it come if it's going to come. And it does every time.
Yeah.
At some point.
Well, that's where intuition always is in the present. It's not in you thinking about what was just said or trying to think about what you're going to say next. It's actually just being in that moment. Otherwise, that's when it gets contrived, right?
Yeah. I think the biggest part is really just, and it was with a gentleman that I dated a couple years ago. He was helping me understand a concept from a Christian perspective. And the concept was being, what is it? You can help me with this, but the concept is that Jesus, I don't go to church, and
I'll help you.
I'm reading through the book called the Bible. But piece by piece, but it's where the Holy Spirit basically says, I've got your back.
Yeah.
And you don't need to worry about it. I really, truly am taking care of you.
Yes.
I guess it's maybe the hands or whatever, the symbol of the hands.
I've got you held.
I've got you held. There
it's like
it is.
that footprints in the sand.
Yes.
Here's
Yeah.
where why was there only two? There were two tracks, and then why was there all of a sudden one? Did you leave me? And he's like, no, that's when I was carrying you.
Exactly. I'm
Yeah.
carrying you. So when I say, can you please help me, guide me, whatever, I surrender to being carried. I surrender to being taken care of.
Right. In the moment, not just necessarily on the
Yeah.
big scale.
Yeah.
Big scene, big
Yes.
decisions, which sometimes that's necessary too. But then don't you think if you do that more consistently, you probably don't find yourself in situations where you have to have the big surrender?
Absolutely. 100%.
Where then it's like really vulnerable and hard because you've
Yeah.
been listening all along.
all along. Life's
For the
easier.
synchronicities, for the,
Yeah.
you know, there's a couple of people that just came up, like in talking about that. Great friend Joseph Zoller, he's written quite a few books about. One translated in English is The Art of Listening to Life, and it's all about the synchronicities, and when we pay attention, then we, life's a bit more like the subtleties versus like
Yeah.
big waves, right? Because we're listening and looking for guidance all along, which always means flow, and doesn't mean that we don't go through hardship, but it just
Yeah.
means that how we go through it's very different because we're surrendering to the part that's not for us to control. So I think you're right when you're doing that all the time, just surrendering to, I don't know what to do right now. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to answer this. Like genuinely, authentically help me. It gets you in the present, which means you are more grounded, which means you are coming from more of that intuitive place, and you're being guided and led.
So is there any, I guess I always like to think about, hey, here's the problem, here's the issue, here's the inspiration, here's what I'm learning. How do I apply that? How do I practice that? So what is it this is what I'm doing right now.
I think that's good. Well, and that's where she's recommended a few times books by Robin Sharma. The monk who sold his Ferrari. Lead Without a Title.
Yeah.
There's one more too.
This Ain't the Surfer and the CEO.
Right. So I've read all of them.
Yeah.
And they're great books. They're actually easy because they're stories, but they're very inspiring. But the consistency, and now listening to all three books, is he talks about there is a discipline. And one that is consistently comes up is get up early.
Yes.
Get on it early, which is hard for me. But that said, I actually have been making that conscious choice to change, not stay up late. And I think a long time it was because it was the only time in my day where I felt like it was mine. Like I was done with, work and being on for people all day and staff, and then I come home and it's my kids, and then, my husband wants some time, and then I'm just like, okay, I just need me. But coming to a place of like, no, I gotta have me all throughout the day. It's not, I can't just put it like at the end of the day and think that that's gonna be enough anyways. So then I don't feel like I need to have an hour or two at night, which means I can get up earlier, which means I can get at it and do those practices, right? Which is things like meditation, which is things like prayer, which is things like just being quiet. For me, it's being in nature. Like I really feel connected when I'm around trees. Even being by the ocean this week, I'm like,
yes.
I love it, but I love it when we're in the trees.
I think one of the things too is always why. So why would I get up early? Why would I create this discipline? Why do I want to do this? What is actually this for? And getting it, like, instead of going, hey, this is a task at 6 a.m., at 5 a.m., or whatever it is. But as an example is with the trading. As I started to do this and the reward was huge, I get really excited about doing this because I know the reward. So part of it is journaling, potentially trying to reflect on all the times when that worked for you. So that there's an excitement around, I want to go to bed early, I want to get up early. And not that that's the solution for everybody, but
it's everybody's day
looks
different and when they do it. I think I've read quite a few books on why they consistently say up in the morning is because you are the most mentally alert and present and revived, right? Your brain has rested over the night.
If your hormones are healthy,
Yes.
if your guts are healthy,
And you're sleeping well.
if your naturopath says, Crystal, you need to take a bunch of melatonin for 10 days to change your circadian rhythm. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So, yes, the nature of a healthy human being is your natural rhythm is that you are rested, clear, and available in the morning by the time the end of the day comes. If your adrenals are right, if your rhythms are right, if your body's healthy, then that's what's naturally going to go on.
And the irony is the thing that's going to make them healthy is the discipline.
Is the discipline.
I mean, because I'm always in this vicious circle. Well, if I get up earlier, then I'm just more tired, and I need my sleep because my sleep is what makes me feel refreshed. And always feeling like it's a compromise. It's a compromise on my sleep. But obviously, when you're doing the things that are nourishing you energetically, emotionally, spiritually, that is part of the nourishment. It's not just sleep. Like, why is it that we always say, there's an average of what people need for sleep? Like minimum 6, ideal would be between 7 and 8. Like most people, that's where they need to be. So when you're getting to 8.5, 9, which is probably more so where I'm at, I'm like, I'm actually getting more sleep than I probably even need. And it's the way that I'm compensating for not having some of the other nourishment that I need more, because that seems just more, it's easier and it's passive.
Yeah.
It's not as active to like, okay, I gotta do this. But I mean, all week we've slept great. We've gone to bed early most nights and had, probably 8 hours sleep every day.
Yeah.
And felt lots of energy all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. In sort of bringing this full circle and wrapping it up, because her and I could, if you don't know, could talk forever and ever and ever, like we do.
We do. Literally, it's been a week. We've not we're never gonna run out of things to talk about.
So going back to being present, to be able to be guided, to
consistently being present,
Yeah.
even in the small moments, and then also the discipline and the practice of consistency around actually finding time for silence,
and getting excited about being supported by life, being supported by life, being supported by God, being taken care of.
believing that you can
Yeah.
be supported too. I mean, that's
Right.
what faith is.
It is true.
Faith is an active process as well. As much
Yes.
as surrender is an active process, so is faith.
Yes.
Faith isn't just saying, oh yeah, whatever, I believe that's going to happen. It's then I'm taking steps, believing that's going to happen. It's like I'm investing my time, my energy, maybe my money, believing in something that I feel guided in, which isn't just me sitting back and saying, okay, I'll wait out until this manifests. It's actually me participating.
Yeah.
So none of it is passive, really.
True.
Like in all of the things.
It's not. Yeah, it's all inspired action.
Right.
It's all guided and inspired action.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy when it is.
Right. Which is actually the opposite of full circle. Putting up the white flag and saying, I surrender. And now you get to, I'm surrendering my will, my freedom, my whatever, right? We get that image of what surrendering maybe has been, but it's actually the active process of surrendering to that, which I don't have control.
Right. Well, I'm really, honestly, first of all, proud of you.
Yeah, it's vulnerable today.
And looking forward to supporting each other in this process of surrender.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a great week.
Yes. So, before I start crying and give this woman a big hug, we're going to say thank you for listening and looking forward to the next time.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.